welcome to the Graveyard Shift, where your nightmares become a reality. I'm your host for this evening, Max Kellerhalls, and with me today I have a packed room. And first off we have...
Hi, I'm Laura.
What's up, Kris?
What's going on, Zack?
I'm Katie, the host of Today in History.
Lilly, best worst stories.
Nora, close to nothing.
Yeah.
The Graveyard Shift is going to be a show where throughout the entire month of October we're going to basically talk about different kinds of horror movies and basically having pretty much a fun time talking about what scares us, what intrigues us, and what we just find fun. And for this episode, we're going to be kicking it off with paranormal horror films. And what we consider paranormal horror films, they have to involve ghosts, and some like ghosts, demons, spirits of any kind. That's what we consider paranormal. So if you have a problem with some of the movies that we've picked, I don't care. So we're going to kick it off by talking about a couple modern horror movies, or I should say modern horror movie franchises. What I consider modern horror movies is like they have more 21st century cinematic tropes to their horror. So like anything past like 2005 and on, I would consider more modern. And the one to kick it off, I'm going to say, is the Conjuring franchise, which is, in my opinion, the definition of what modern ghost paranormal movies look like today, or at least the standard they should like. It's a bar, I should say. Would you consider that for who's going to be talking about Conjuring?
Me. So I guess just to summarize, like the Conjuring, you think of, at least for me, what first comes to mind is Ed and Lorraine Warren. They are the top, I guess, demonologists, ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, first of their kind here in the United States, from my understanding. What they do is they were investigating homes, locations in general, and not only were they doing investigations along that, but they were getting the, I don't want to say diocese, I think that's wrong, but local church in the
Diocese
area.
would
Yeah,
be
that'd be
correct.
Oh, it is diocese. Okay, great. So the diocese, local diocese, to help exorcise the demons out of people and places, as well as just cleansing the home in general.
The movie just follows them on like a kind of case-to-case basis just over the course of their life. The first movie, I think, they are approached by a woman who's experiencing a haunting in her house, and basically it just sort of kicks off the sort of format for all the movies, which is someone goes to them because they're being haunted. They go to the person, it's usually a family, and it's the house, and they're like running some tests. They run tests to determine whether it's actually haunted or if there's like a reasonable explanation to why the events surrounding the family are happening. Spoiler, it's haunted.
No. Oh no!
No. And then they do stuff that makes the ghost go away.
Except the third one's kind of different.
The third one
Yes.
is different. The
Because-
third one, because it's like,
The devil made
Well,
me do it.
because it opens with them already helping a family with a demonic possession, and then the demonic possession is supposedly over, but it actually just took over somebody else.
Yeah.
And then he killed somebody. So that was not good.
In the real world, it was like the first ever case to have...
the devil
demonic possession, yeah.
made me do it.
There's
Yeah.
other movies that have talked about this similar idea. I'll just briefly talk about them. There's a movie called The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is more of like a courtroom drama with an exorcism kind of crammed in the middle, which I find it's a good movie. The scares aren't that interesting in that movie, but I do think it's a really interesting courtroom drama nonetheless. But to continue on with the Conjuring franchise, I have seen the first one and bits of the other ones. What I consider why these movies are so popular is because just how well constructed each scare throughout the movie is. And I have to give that all down to James Wan, who is basically like the modern day John Carpenter, to my
Yeah.
opinion, because he's just like constantly coming with new horror movie franchises, and like one of them we're about to talk about, Insidious. That's just like him just going nuts with the idea of ghost movies.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of them and not in order.
Okay, yeah.
That's the best way to do it.
Right?
Yeah. But yeah, the Insidious franchise is interesting. I find it more like a creative way of like coming up with like ghost movies, because like all the ghosts have like cool designs and like cool backstories. Like the one that looks like Darth Maul.
Yeah.
That famous one. But yeah, like the Conjuring franchise is neat because most of it's based off real events, while as the Insidious franchise is cool in that they're just, what is the next creative ghost gonna be? Like, I know I think the one you saw, the fourth one,
Yes.
has the key fingers.
The last kid.
Yeah.
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 The key finger guy. Yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about the Insidious or Conjuring franchise before
Well,
we move on?
I feel like I majorly prefer Conjuring to Insidious. I think the scares in Conjuring are just more earned than they are in Insidious, because there's this like really famous jump scare in Insidious where he's like talking and then there's nothing behind him and then it pans away and then there is, and it's that one that you said looks like Darth Maul. And I after one viewing, it wasn't scary again the next time, but there's this one that gets me every time in the first Conjuring movie where she like lights a candle into the basement and then these hands pop out and they clap. Yes!
Yeah.
And it gets me every time because you can see the hands, but it's still just like, the tension is built so much better.
I have a funny story with that. So when I watched this movie for the first time, I watched it with one of my friends who gets scared really easy. And one of my friends already seen the movie beforehand, so when that scene came on, he just went up to that friend and just did the clap when it happened right next to his ear, and he jumped up and
that's so
freaked
good.
out.
Oh.
It was so funny.
Because
If
it's so
someone did that to
creepy.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. They're well constructed scares. That's why I say like the Conjuring, at least the first and second Conjuring, set a bar.
Hey, the third Conjuring has sexy demon man, okay?
What?
He's
Shut
so...
up, Katie.
Hold on, I got some pictures.
Talking
Yeah,
about
I
the
wanna
Conjuring
see
though,
it.
did you know that they're making a fourth one?
Yes.
Yeah, they're making a fourth
Yes.
one.
Also, Conjuring, it's a bigger franchise than
Yeah.
just those, ones with Ed and Lorraine Warren. Because with Ed and Lorraine Warren, they got sort of like a history that they've kind of built up in The
Mhm.
Conjuring. I think quite well, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't feel like it's trying to copy like the Marvel format at all.
Yeah, like they naturally kind
It
of
just
made
naturally,
like
kind of.
a
I will say-
spin-off after spin-off. Like
Other
Yeah.
than, like, Annabelle, some of the spin-offs are not as good.
No.
Although-
no,
The Nun is not good.
I like The Nun
I do too.
as, like, a guilty pleasure kind
Yeah.
of watch.
Alright.
Yeah. Also,
I-
the woman who plays Lorraine, I think it's her sister who plays the main character in The Nun.
No,
Or
they're not related.
they're
at all.
not related.
That's her that's her
real
real sister in
Oh, it's
real
her
life.
That's the
sister.
actress's
Yeah.
sister.
Oh,
Yeah,
whoa.
They're
that's
both Farmigas.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so a lot of people were like, ooh, what if they connect the
Connected,
Nun?
that,
just
which
a
I think
guy.
they might plan on doing, because with The Conjuring, obviously,
Alright.
there's a lot of fiction instead of.
Well,
actual
yeah,
facts.
like, I mean, it was really interesting because I've seen a lot of interviews with the writers of the first two Conjuring movies, which, if you go online and look up Schmoes Know interview Conjuring writers, it's a really funny interview where we talk about how they came up with the idea of these movies, and they actually sat down with Lorraine Warren, and the one thing that she said, you can make up anything, but you have to get Ed right. Because they were a power couple.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that was the one thing that she wanted to keep true, was that they were a loving marriage, and I think that also kind of makes like the scares
Better?
and more impactful, because like
It's their
you
relationship.
feel bad for them, because like these are
Yeah.
just a nice couple trying to help people out, and when bad shit happens to them, you're like, oh man.
See, I like to joke that most of The Conjuring 2 is just basically Ed going, Lorraine! And then like running after her, or
But-
making sure she doesn't,
I think
die.
that's so strange because after Ed died like a decade ago, but Lorraine died pretty recently.
Yeah.
And after she died, like their stuff came out that they might have maybe not been a power couple,
Oh.
which made me really sad.
Yeah.
Wait, is
Oh
this
wow,
real
way to
life?
ruin that
Yeah.
little bit that I set up.
Ed, well, okay, because here's the thing: is I try to separate Ed and Lorraine Warren in the movies and Ed
Oh
and
yeah,
Lorraine.
okay,
That's-
that's
it's
fair.
very
That's fair.
They had like a cute meet, but then like Ed
Meet
may
cute?
have no cute meet.
I'm sorry, are these movies based on real life?
Yes.
Yes.
They're based on true stories.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But like Ed may have been abusive and may have cheated on Lorraine, but Lorraine
With a ghost?
now she
Ghost
might
pussy?
be. Who knows?
With
I don't
pussy.
know. My butt.
Oh god, I never want to hear that word
Okay,
ever.
maybe we should move on.
I do just want to add, I think.
I may not have seen
yeah.
the movies, but I do think, based on hearing it, something that is underrated in the whole genre as a whole is world building.
Yes.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
a lot of franchises in general fall flat in that they don't build a world around
Yeah.
their movies. So it feels like you're watching the same movie with a different ghost 3 times.
I also
and
think,
not 3 different
Yeah.
movies.
I also
and-
think what helps is the character building they do with
Yeah.
these
Right.
characters, because I feel like with other movie franchises, the characters tend to be kind of like
I feel like
types.
that's why there's such a stark drop from a first movie in a franchise to a second movie in
Yeah.
a
Of
franchise
course.
for people, because they feel like they're just watching the first movie again.
Well, sometimes
But
like
if you're able to effectively world build and character build so that you actually care about both the characters in the film and it creates the tension because you actually care about the characters that are being haunted or fighting the haunting or whatever it may be, that has a huge impact on longevity of the scares that
Yes.
you're making.
I also think the reason why is because most movies, especially on this list that do have franchises, most of their franchises were just like a really good first movie, and I think like The Conjuring had enough material to work off of and build upon. But I'm gonna move on and like talk about like, well, I'll just say like I'll say this for like maybe the Paranormal Activities. I'm only gonna bring up just this. We don't have to talk about it, but like that was just like one movie that went. They were like, I'm just gonna make a really scary movie on a really low budget with just one camera, and it worked. Problem is when they're like, can you make a sequel? He was like, I got no lore to work off of. Okay, I got. And they just shout out like 5 other sequels and then a recent reboot.
Because you really don't have to watch them in order, do you?
No,
No.
not at all.
Yeah, if there's no lore, you don't need to watch.
Even if you watch them out of order and there is lore, I think it's still, if it's a truly good written world, you're gonna want to watch the others then to
Yeah.
fill in on the context you missed.
Right.
Because a lot of times it's that you don't draw interest in the characters or the ghosts in them, or there's not enough there to draw you to want to view the other parts of the series. Like a good series makes you want to watch the other parts of the series no matter your entry point, if it's pretty laudably held by
Yeah.
people to be good.
Very true. Okay, we got a couple more. Katie, I know you probably want to talk a little bit about A Haunting of Hill House and / Bly Manor.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to quickly bring up about that?
Well, I think it's just so interesting to see this long form version of horror, because those are both TV shows, right? And it's kind of more in the vein, but not really, of like American Horror Story, where they use the same actors, but it's different stories. But they're also kind of like inspired by books. So like The Haunting of Bly Manor is very much
Turn of the screw.
Turn of the screw. And so and then Haunting of Hill House is like a book. And so they use that as like their basis, but then they like go completely off the rails. And they have some really, really good scares that are something that Haunting of Hill House did was there's like I think it was like 39 ghosts just in the background of episodes, and you can like watch each episode and try and find those ghosts, because they're not like in the shot in a way where you're like, oh, there's the ghost. They're like hidden. And so when you find them, it's just that much creepier. It's like, oh, there's just like something watching in the
I think
background.
it's really playing off that idea of like, as humans, we're pattern-seeking creatures. So like when something's like, when you look at a photo and you're just like, what's that in the background? That it's just eerie. I think it's playing on that idea. I've seen other films do that. There's a movie, it's this really independent movie called Lake Mungo. Look it up. It really plays on that idea, and it's fucking terrifying. Okay, I got one more modern horror movie that's kind of a franchise, but the sequel's not a paranormal movie. We're gonna talk about Unfriended.
Basically, in the movie, they
They were all on a Zoom call.
Well,
and
It's like a Facebook group.
it's
chat.
a Facebook
Yeah,
group chat because that's it was like 2014.
no,
Yeah.
it was the other one.
FaceTime.
No,
No.
the
Oh,
other
God.
one.
Skype.
Skype.
It was a Skype.
Remember
so
Skype?
Oh, yeah.
Basically-
You remember that ancient technology?
Back in
all
my
of these
day.
Yeah,
these friends are
Back
on
in
like a
2014.
all these friends are on a Skype call,
Uh-huh.
and like haunty, ghosty things happen when this person joins and basically
Well,
claims
aren't they
to be.
also playing on the dark web, or is that the other?
No,
movie?
that's
That's
the
a
sequel.
sequel. That's what I'm saying. We don't have to
Yeah.
talk about that one.
Haunty, ghosty things happen when this person joins.
Freaky shit happens.
Yeah, when she claims to be like their dead friend who killed herself. Trigger warning.
Wait, question real quick. Is this the one, because I briefly remember seeing trailers for it, is this the one also where the guy like kind of put his hand?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
put his
yeah.
hand in a blender.
Okay, okay. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Shock and awe.
It's really interesting because it's like it's kind of found footage, but it's also kind of not.
Mhm.
Um,
It's like.
Oh well, up until the end.
yeah.
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 but it's
Like the
it's
ending
really,
has that last scare where it's
It does actually have like a pretty good plot twist because this whole time you're like, why is this happening to these people? And then you find out why. It's
Oh yeah,
they're
the-
shitty people.
No, that's why I want to talk about this because like because we're gonna get into like some foreign horror in a bit. So I feel like with modern horror, at least like most domestic American horror, and ghosts for the most part are vengeful spirits in America, and I feel like Unfriended really took that to an interesting angle where it was like not only was this girl was heavily bullied.
She was also
Yeah.
a bitch.
Really?
So
She
they're
was a
all
bully.
horrible in this situation.
Oh, even the girl who like.
It's one of those situations where we're like, oh, you're a bully and you did something stupid. We're gonna make it so much worse for you because you've been a bitch this whole time.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's
Ooh.
That's
a
why-
bully the bully scenario. Like
Yeah.
the bully got turned on by
Reverse.
the other bullies. and
Reverse
then-
Uno plus 4
And
card.
so, it's so bad
Perfectly
for her.
put.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's why it was so bad for her because the entire school
It was
like turned on her because
Oh.
It's like Mean Girls,
Oh, wow.
but worse.
Even her friends, like,
Shit.
because
girls
it's,
if they were evil.
Evil, like
But
It's,
evil
um,
shit.
The point you were trying to make was malevolent
Yeah.
is an aspect of American
Yes,
ghost horror.
and also
Most-
I like the idea that it played on the culture of today of like cyberbullying. I think that's a really important
Yeah.
thing to like
Yeah.
put an angle on because most of the ghost movies that we talked about are like in the 60s, 70s.
Ancient horror.
yeah.
Ancient?
Yeah.
For fuck's sake, it's not that
Tell
long.
that to my mom, Nora.
I w-
No,
I'm just
also like
kidding.
these ghosts are like summoned because
like
someone did some stupid shit
I was
and
gonna say,
made
doing
it mad or
stupid stuff.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like the Conjuring, it's like this old witch from like the 17th century that
Yeah.
cursed all these
Yeah.
women. And but Unfriended,
Yes.
it's a bully that got bullied.
It's just
Yeah.
some girl that probably had Tumblr.
Ooh.
Yeah, 'cause it's so much more relatable
It's a big
that way.
subgenre. It's a big subgenre though.
Yes.
though.
Yeah.
To have it be these like modern like the dark side of our everyday lives
Uh-huh.
creating
Yeah.
ghosts
Because
that are
I
gonna come
still
kill us
remember.
all.
I will say this. This had like a really effective trailer because I
Yeah, it
remember
did.
like it started off like all those like Facebook commercials,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then it led into like.
I think it was
like
one of those
slowly
early like YouTube trailers that would just like totally fake you out.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
slowly started to like turn into the idea of like, but just imagine like that one video you didn't want going out there, and what happens if that person?
I think we've
And
seen a
Trying to
lot
get
of
back,
TV shows
yeah.
and other movies in other genres
Yeah.
that play on that same idea. Like
Yeah.
when like Eat the Rich was huge, then we got the Purge series out of it.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
like
Yes.
these
Oh,
like
we'll talk about
big
that later.
pop culture things that were like, oh, you hear one bad story of like a girl got bullied in a group chat. Now we have a movie to represent that happening.
Yes.
We had like we had all the big hit shows like 13 Reasons Why was a huge show.
I also will
Same
say.
kind of idea. There's this malevolency to our everyday lives no one talks about, and that creates this.
I will also say,
genre.
going on that idea, you brought up like the 13 Reasons Why thing. I also think like a lot of the elements of that story is also based off the Amanda Todd case.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unfriended 2, Dark Web. You say that it's not supernatural, but there's multiple endings. And there is an ending that makes it ghosty, which is not good, but it does exist.
Well, that makes no fucking sense
No,
because like.
it doesn't. Well, and the weird thing that they did is that if you went to the theater and you watched it,
Yeah, I
you didn't
heard
know
that.
what ending
Yeah.
you
They
got.
basically pulled a clue.
Oh.
Yeah.
So depending on what screening you saw, you got a different ending.
I also really hate to do this to you, but
Oh,
I
fuck.
do want to shout out one more modern horror thing. It's a TV show, and I just want to shout it out because I don't think it gets any appreciation
I
or
know what she's gonna
recognition. Evil.
Oh.
I love this show with a passion, and I'm so mad that it's so criminally underrated.
Is that the show with like the Luke Cage actor?
Yes,
Did she
and
show
he's
you the trailer?
No, I've seen the trailer.
Every
highly
time she's in my dorm, she's like, we should watch Evil.
It's so good. So I think one of the reasons why nobody knows about it is because it made sort of like a channel jump. It moved from CBS to Paramount Plus,
Oh.
which
that makes
actually
sense.
worked in its favor for the quality of its story,
Okay.
but
Okay.
not for like the people like
Not
getting
viewership.
views. Yeah,
Not
which was
viewership.
terrible.
Especially since Paramount Plus is not as popular.
Exactly, and no
Yeah.
one's gonna get it except like somebody's
But we're not
grandma.
gonna get
I
any
love her.
sponsorships anytime soon.
But basically, forensic scientist who's super skeptical gets roped up in doing what Ed and Lorraine were doing
Mhm.
with a Catholic priest in training. His sort of like tech guy who does like he's the sort of science guy that goes, oh, the reason why you're hearing creepy shit is because your pipes aren't working. Get that fixed. So that's
I
the
love
majority of the first season, and that first season has like a small subplot that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And what makes this show, especially in the first season, because then the next 2 seasons, because there's 3 so far, is it's like what's real and what isn't. Because the first season, it's very much, oh, these demons aren't real. These are just other issues that people need to address. But then the other 2 seasons, because they moved to Paramount Plus, got a TVMA rating, and were allowed to really go all out.
Okay.
And so now it's really blurring the line of what's real and what isn't. And the way it does it is so, I think, just natural
Okay.
that it's hard to tell, like, what ends where.
Where the line is.
Huh.
Yeah, where the
Cool.
line is. It's very well written. It's very well acted. Danish, I think, actress. I think she's Danish. I could be wrong. Katja Herbers is the lead.
Sounds
She's
Danish.
does. She's phenomenal as the lead. She's a mother of 4 children.
Shit.
Exactly, and her girls are also fantastic. They're like, it's awesome. She has a husband who works as a climber guiding tourists up like Mount Everest,
Oh.
somewhere like that. So he's like in and out of the picture, which is really funny with the channel hop, because he literally leaves a TV14 channel and then comes back to a TVMA channel, and it's the funniest thing ever. And there's a bunch of
I
other
can finally say fuck now.
exactly. There's a bunch of other characters, and it's so good. Practical effects are great. The soundtrack is great. The storyline is awesome, and it's really good. And I'm so sad not enough people know about it. But yeah,
Okay.
check it out.
Yeah. That sounds pretty cool. I might actually give it a check out. All right. So we're gonna do like a bit of like a subgenre turn within a subgenre. We're gonna talk more about like what I call a little bit artsy horror ghost movies. And what I mean by that, they're just really well made and like have a really unique vision to them. And what I'm gonna start off with, this one I should say, is like Crimson Peak, which I really like because I'm a huge fan of Guillermo del Toro. And I also like his view on ghosts, which is a very foreign way of looking at ghosts. Of like they're very passive, and the real horrors are what comes from the real world. I also love the designs of all the ghosts in the movie. They're all really cool, weird, twisted things, and also I love the aesthetic of this. What is it, Victorian? Like really gothic architecture. Basically, what the movie is about is this girl marries into this really rich family, who she then moves over to London or something.
Yeah.
And when she goes over there, she's haunted by many different ghosts, all trying to warn her about something that may be going on, something nefarious. And there's some weird twisted shit that happens with her husband and her sister-in-law, all played really well by, I forgot the main actress's name, but she was Alice in the Alice in Wonderland
Yeah, she
movie.
kind of has a weird
She has a,
name.
yeah. But Tom Hiddleston plays the husband,
Yes!
and Jessica Chastain plays his sister. There's some stuff that happens.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I think it's Maya Wasikowska.
That's probably close.
Is that Polish?
It's very hard to say.
Probably Mia also.
Mia, also, yes,
Yeah.
most likely Mia.
Wasikowska?
All right,
That short.
Out of my
her,
Polish last name.
Yeah.
Mia.
Alice. I'll just call her Alice.
Yeah.
Alice.
But yeah, Alice is really good in the movie. I will say she kind of plays like a really like passive character. Like everything kind of just happens to her. Like there's a moment where like one of the ghosts like straight up says to her, "Don't do that," and she's like, "I'm gonna do it."
See, actually, I think that more shows her curious nature and lack of passivity.
Okay.
Because imagine you're in like this. Okay, you're right. The house probably is gothic, and that's more to the plot because it is the Victorian era, but the house is gothic.
Yeah, it's very like
but-
cool, creepy architecture. There's a hole in the ceiling
Yeah.
that just leaves like
Right.
snow in the middle. It's really cool.
But like
Oh,
we
the
see.
dust, yeah. It's light on dust.
Light
Yeah.
on dust.
Light on dust, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a skylight, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Well, no. There's a legit
Just a hole.
Not
Like
like
it's not supposed to be there. It's
it's-
rot.
it's all broken down, and it's just literally
okay,
like a hole
okay,
that like, and there's a bunch of wood on the ground, and they have
Yeah.
like snow coming down.
Ah,
They're
like
like,
the
well, we
roof
can't.
caved in. Like,
Yeah.
like old roof. The
Yeah.
ladders
Also,
on it.
one really cool detail that I like about the show, and I think it's very, the movie, is like the whole ground is built off like red clay.
Yeah.
So like there's moments when they're like in the basement, you see what really looks like the whole house bleeding.
Yeah.
It's a really cool aesthetic, and also ties into why some of the ghosts look the way they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like this movie. I love the look of it. I can see why some people don't like it because it is very niche.
I think the thing is the best way to describe it is it's a movie with ghosts in it, not a ghost movie.
Yeah, but I still wanted it because
Yeah.
it's a very
Specific.
one because like with a lot of Guillermo del Toro movies, at least some of his horror-based stuff,
Yeah.
it's always goes down to the real monsters or the humans.
Yes.
It's not film, but it is a game. Bloodborne is set in
Yes.
a very similar style architecture, and the plot in its idea is very similar. That humans' curious nature is a double-edged sword to both.
Yeah.
It is both exploration and our Achilles heel. And so I think that era is a very underutilized one in this genre specifically.
Definitely.
We are either very much in the past, like witch trials,
Yes.
old and American only.
Colonial.
Yeah, colonial,
yeah.
or we're all the way on the other end. We're pretty modern. There's not a whole lot of movies that take advantage of this like historical space that really is full of cultural clash and different sentiment among populace, different wage divides that could really make for interesting ghosts on top of characters.
There is like a really interesting class element in this movie, especially because of like her. She's marrying into wealth.
Right.
Well, but she's the wealthy one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Because
Okay. Yeah,
that's
that's
the
right.
thing.
That's why she needs. That's right.
Because they need the money from her.
They need the money from her because their house is breaking down. They come from old money. I think the other family comes from
They
old
come
money.
from old money, but it's been like gambled away and
it's
all
been
these
lost.
things.
It's
yeah,
been lost.
they're losing their and they're putting a lot of money into his endeavors, which are not going very well.
Yeah.
Also, it's one of those because back then, like what would happen is a man would pick a woman based on her status and how it benefits him. So like, but then at the same time, like the dad would pick the husband based on how it could benefit her. But in this instance, the dad wasn't around to say, no, that's a bad idea.
Something happens to the dad.
Something happens to the dad, and it's very graphic, and my mom had to look away. When
Well,
we
like
watched
the
it.
thing about I like about Guillermo del Toro movies is like out of nowhere it just gets violent really quick.
Yeah.
There's one stab that looks like it hurts.
Oh.
Like I'll just say I won't say what happens too, but like someone gets stabbed in like the armpit, like up
Yeah.
into the armpit.
You see it like
towards-
splurt.
and I was just
Oh,
like,
cool.
that sounds like it's cool, and it's like that's a different place, but I'm also like, what a weird place to get stabbed.
I mean, if you
Yeah.
think about it, though, it makes sense because, like, if you stab at your front, you have your rib cage here protecting you. But if you have armpit here, there's nothing.
Yeah, so
there.
that's what I'm saying.
Ligaments and
It's,
stuff.
yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also,
That
that's
would
a
hurt.
part that moves a lot. Like,
Yeah.
you don't realize that you
Right.
move your shoulder a lot,
Uh-huh.
and that would move your armpits.
But
It's
no.
like, ugh.
Yeah,
ow.
the movie. I really like this movie. I like a lot of. Really go back and look at some of Guillermo del Toro's earlier works, especially when he was back when he was in Mexico doing like The Devil's Backbone. That's another ghost movie. It's a good like ghost movie that talks about like no, the ghosts are just trying to warn us about things that are going to happen. It's like, hey, don't repeat mistakes. Okay, next kind of artsy movie that I want to talk about is this little film called Last Night in Soho. It came out recently, and I love this film.
Well, okay, because Last Night in Soho was really strange because so this girl in London, she
Modern day London. That's
London.
very important to it.
That's important. So she really romanticizes. Actually, no. So she's from like the country in England.
Yeah.
But she romanticizes the fuck out of like London,
60s
60s,
London.
because like she has all these records. She loves the fashion. Like it's her whole brand, right? She is very much I was born in the wrong generation girly.
She is very much that. girl.
And so she moves to London to like pursue fashion, but her roommate sucks ass as they always
Oh,
do.
her roommate's a bitch.
Bitch. No, so her
come on.
roommate sucks, and so she moves into this apartment, and then like she starts having visions of this girl back in the 60s, and it seems really, really nice at first, and then she kind of sees like the darker side of the 60s and like what she was going through, and then she starts to be like haunted by these things. And it's also kind of an understanding of the movie that she may be like
She has a connection
connection
to
to
like
spirits.
ghosts because at the beginning, this isn't really a spoiler. Like her mom committed suicide.
trigger warning.
Thank you. But she still sees her mom throughout like the movie, and like like her mom will always give like, oh, I'm proud of you. Like it's really kind of sweet stuff like that for like a dark situation.
Yeah.
So there's hints that she has like a connection to like spirits.
Like a medium?
Yeah, like a medium.
Okay.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. And then when she goes to this one particular flat, that shit just gets boosted, and yeah, that's when she like sees stuff from the past. And the movie stars Thomasin McKenzie as the main character. She was in Jojo Rabbit as the little Jew girl. And
Anya Taylor-Joy?
Yeah, I was getting
I
into that.
love Anya Taylor-Joy.
She's great in this movie.
so
It's also a really different role for her.
It really,
Yes.
Like most roles she
Really
plays is like really young, but this one she has to play like a young woman, but like a woman trying to like
Probably in like her 20s.
like early 20s, but trying to like be mature and like do mature things.
I
That
think it's-
kind of backfires her,
It
especially.
sounds like it leverages foreign film themes too. In
Yes,
Yeah.
it
A way.
definitely.
When we get to that section, maybe that'll become more
Yeah,
clear.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Because the movie is heavily influenced by Italian cinema called giallo films, specifically where they would use color a lot to help specifically show different horror. So like when it's like modern day, so when it's modern day, it's kind of shot and filmed like any other movie on digital. But when it goes to the 60s, they use a bunch of like different colors, like reds, blues, greens, trippy like ways to make
It's
them.
not abruptly clear. It's
No.
made subtly clear that there's been a shift here.
Yeah.
And the thing they do
Okay.
with that is when the past starts to haunt the future, the
There's a
colors start
blending.
to like
Yeah.
blend in, and it's really well
Oh.
used in it. Also, one thing that scared me in this movie, because I never see this, ghost dicks.
Yeah, I was watching it with Kaya, and I go, that was a penis!
Yeah,
That's
no.
terrifying.
Because a lot of
me.
Rate it on
Every
1 to
day.
10.
and it's an old British white guy.
Yeah.
How big do you think it is?
It's a hard life for me. How terrifying it is every day we wake up.
Ghost stick.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Okay.
Never seen one before ever. This is a very scary experience.
Yeah, it's freaked me
Terrifying.
out because I was just like, oh no.
Because you don't expect it, and
No,
then
it
there's
is a jump
just
scare.
a penis on your
Imagine
screen.
how women.
Imagine how we feel.
Yeah. Well, on that point. No, hold on. I'm gonna segue this shit. Hold on.
Fully
Hold on.
developed.
Hold on.
It's gonna segue that kills them.
Hold on. Because the movie does talk about, trigger warning, rape culture.
Yes.
Especially in the 60s. Because of just like, it was that idea of like that Harvey Weinstein thing of like, you do
It's-
this and I'll get you this.
It's very Me Too.
Very. Unlike most movies where it's a bit preachy, this movie handles it very well.
Yeah,
And
I
because,
would say it more accurately is commodifying.
thank
Yeah.
you.
It's showing people
Shut your
commodifying
mouth.
their body in a way that is either to leverage for position or some other benefit.
Definitely.
And the dark side of that is what
I-
makes it sound
Definitely. Like there's a scene in this movie that really disturbed me where like she goes into like the back room of like all these dancers, and you basically like look into each of these rooms, and basically like someone's getting a happy ending, someone is over here.
Everyone's sleeping with someone for something.
No, there's one who's just like doing drugs, one is overdosed, one is calling her mom saying like, hey, this is not what I really wanted, and it's just freaking her out. And it was like,
Sounds
oh,
like
it's
Friday night.
She is right.
She's not that wrong.
I think what's really interesting, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler, is it's also like an unexpected good for her film, because at the end you're like,
okay.
good for her. Her.
Yes. I agree. You know what? I'll agree.
I thought you were
'Cause,
gonna say yes and no, and I was gonna be like, you're wrong.
No, I guess I'm like, because I'm like, yes, good for her, but I'm also like, I think she took it. Well, no, she didn't take it too far.
She didn't take it far enough, baby.
Ooh.
Because there is like one genuinely nice guy in the movie, if that's in the modern day.
One
Shut up.
nice guy.
Hey, at least we get one. Most
I
movies
wouldn't-
don't even have that.
Which
Me
oh
when
wait.
I have one male friend.
Yeah, he is a nice guy. Yeah, he's cute. He also helps her like investigate, because basically she goes really off the
Oh
rails.
yeah, like
And he helps
it kind of
her.
gets a bit psychological because it's like
yeah.
See,
at
I
a
have
point
no
she's like,
idea
is
what's
this real?
going on.
Is this just
And I would love to
all
know
my
what
head?
happens in the movie.
We can watch it.
Oh my god,
Yeah,
okay.
I highly recommend you watch it because I feel like if we keep talking about it, we're gonna spoil some
it,
stuff.
Okay.
and it's
So,
really worth the
It's
watch.
really worth it. The reason why I also was interested in this movie in the first place, Edgar Wright directed it.
Mm.
And if you don't know who that is, He's the guy behind Shaun of the Dead, Cornetto Trilogy.
I love Shaun of the Dead.
What else? Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Baby Driver, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
All them movies, and this is just another one to add to his list of like really good movies. In my
Before we
opinion.
move on, I would just like to say, and I don't know his name, but the one British guy in that movie, his forehead pisses me off.
Oh, Matt Smith, the Doctor.
Wait, why does his forehead piss you off?
Because
Why
he-
doesn't my forehead piss you off?
Because I also have a big forehead. It's his forehead specifically. It's like the way his eyebrows arch and like
Your eyebrows
We're
don't
talking.
arch. Is that why you get pissed?
fuck off. It's just I'll show you a picture. His forehead pisses me off.
I mean, look at Max. Is he in the same boat?
No, because it's a different thing. I don't know how to explain it.
Max
you're-
has
you're-
reasonable
no, I'm not gonna
proportions.
I
say
know what
that's
he
too
looks
weird.
like. Moving on, we're gonna keep going down with another artsy film, Mama.
Ah!
Jesus Christ. Mama is a movie directed by Andy Muschietti. It's the movie that pretty much got him to direct the It movies, which we will be covering on the show.
And
Not on
Guillermo
this
del Toro's
episode.
involved as well.
Guillermo del Toro saw some of his early. He saw the short film Mama that this was based off of. But yeah, Mama. It's a good movie. It's about like a family who's trying to have kids. They find, or they get these like rabid children they find in the woods. That they like.
Max, you're totally. That's not what it's about. Like it is. They're not trying to have kids.
Is this the one where they find the kids in the woods who are like basically like grew up out there almost, and they're like,
Yeah,
what's going on?
because-
And the
so-
kid keeps talking. And they're like, you're just talking to your imaginary friend, but
Yeah.
it's not.
It's
It's
Because
not
it's-
at all.
It's his
Yeah.
nieces, because his brother,
Yeah.
during like the 2008
yeah.
crash, like
It's
killed
like
his wife.
they're like
and stuff.
squatting in a house almost, right?
Yeah.
Like basically, yeah.
Oh,
they're just like
shit.
disheveled. Like these kids have been left in the
I'm gonna
their
cut
own
my
for
bit out
forever.
and just have you say.
Yeah.
I've actually seen this. I can
It's a
this
good
page.
movie.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a good movie.
It
I
is
have-
unsettling
I didn't
because
see
it is like that play that a lot of the more modern movies have had, where it's like you're just imagining it. It's
Mhm.
like all in your head. Nothing's wrong, but then as
Well,
you
since
start
they're kids too.
right, and they're kids. You're just a kid being a kid. You have an imaginary friend. That's fine. And like the kid talks about her like she's there. It's like, oh, this is like Mama's seat kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's sweet. And then stuff starts happening, and they
Yeah.
progressively get more and more freaked out. And then I think, isn't there a moment where they have some sort of like confrontation, or where they're like, just stop like doing that? And the
Yeah.
kid's like, Mama's not gonna like that.
Yeah.
And then it goes off the
I think
rails to
the
the end
scene
of the movie.
that got me was like, I can't remember. I don't, and I'm not gonna describe it right, but there's a scene where like the lights are messing around, and the one mom's like, she's looking around and shit, and then that child's
Yeah.
right there, and I'm like,
I
man,
feel
that
like
fucked me up, and I was so scared
What?
to babysit after I saw that.
Like it like the lights
It's
flicker,
flicker,
and then
and
it's
then
one of those
it's
things where it's
like-
like it's the pan away, pan back, pan away, pan. There's the ghost.
There's the
Like
child.
it's the same kind of
Yeah.
effect, but
There's
like
the ghost,
with
yeah.
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 but with
Children in
But it's
horror
just a
movies
feral
generally
child.
kind of scary.
No,
it's
so there
two
is a
feral
in
children. It's an
general.
older and a younger
Yeah.
feral
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
Because one of them is old enough to have remembered a reality without Mama and like actually existing as a
Yeah.
normal person, whereas the other one is like way too young. She is not adapting to society. She is
She's
really-
clinging to
yeah.
this mama.
she
yeah.
needs this because she doesn't know anything else. She doesn't know how to talk. She doesn't know how to walk. It's just
How
like
does
all
she
these.
get there then?
She crawls.
Yeah,
Well,
they-
they find them, but
Thi-
she like
this
crawls
is like
around
one
and
of
stuff.
those things where like you guys were just talking about in like the Soho movie, where it's the characters. Some characters know and can see the ghost. Others can't. So you're playing this dichotomy the whole time between the kids and believing them, and then the parents and like them thinking they're being kids,
So
and
you always
they've
have
been traumatized.
You
I
always
don't
believe
think
the
it's that they
kids.
can't see them. I think it's that Mama doesn't want them to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but essentially
Same
it's
energy.
the back and forth that like your kids are just really
Kids.
traumatized. Like you just needed a friend, so you made one, right?
Mhm.
And like that's how you got through it. It's all good. That's
And,
fine.
yeah, and
We'll
then-
acclimate you back, but then the real diabolic
Yeah.
truth comes out that it is like this like demon
Mhm.
spirit thing.
The
I-
ending really got me.
Yeah, I will say like from what I've seen of the movie, that ironically I find there's some moments actually quite beautiful.
Yeah,
Like in
I
that
think
haunting
that's fair.
kind of way of like that's creepy, but like the way it's shot and like the moonlit lighting of it, I was just like,
Well,
it looks kind of beautiful, but in a creepy way.
it kind of is because it's also like the ghost I wouldn't say that this movie really has a bad guy in like a traditional sense.
Yeah.
Like the people don't like the ghost, but the ghost isn't like really actively. She does hurt people, but not because she's like, oh, I'm evil and you guys suck. She's hurting people.
Mama Bear.
Yeah,
Mama
that's
Bear.
exactly what she's doing. And she's like
Yeah.
trying to protect her. And then you find out like her backstory. You're like, oh, that like really sucks,
Mhm.
and you feel for
It's
her.
unique. It's unique
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the ghost is like the traditional like American cinema style, like
Yeah,
like malevolent ghost.
And honestly, when
But
she does
it's
kill people,
it
it's
has a
good.
spin, but it has a
It's
spin
like
on
it's
it that makes
malevolent
it
ghost
sets it
with
apart
good
from
intentions.
just any old movie, right? It's a relatable ghost the same way we like a relatable villain.
Yep.
It's the exact same way where you're like, oh, I don't necessarily agree with you killing people, but I also understand why you did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
See,
I'll-
it's just like I'm hearing, like hearing this is like the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
Very
I
much
thought
a
of
whole
Yeah.
immediately. I'm just like, oh.
All right. This is, I think we're gonna move on from Mama because we are gonna have one more artsy horror film, and I think Nora's gonna talk about this. Hereditary.
Hereditary. Has anyone else seen it?
I think I've
heard
seen it.
about
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hereditary is basically starts out as kind of like a film about grief, specifically mother's grief. But then it gets, but like after like the first, I think I want to say 30 to 40 minutes,
But,
then
yeah.
things get really, really, really spooky because it turns into not a film about a mother's grief, but a film about what if there were like a bunch of outside forces kind of controlling what you do in your everyday life just to achieve this one horrific goal.
And there's no escape.
And
from
there
it.
is no escape from it. And I think that is set up perfectly with the shot, I think it might be the opening shot. It's been a minute since I've seen this, but it might be the opening shot of the family. The shot is set up like one would be looking at a diorama.
Yeah, I know enough about this movie. I also know the ending and a lot of the themes it goes for, especially with the diorama idea and like the idea of like everything has been set up to a point that like you cannot get out
Trapped
of it.
in a box.
You are
and
trapped
you
out of
live
it.
in a box.
And it's also going
Yeah.
to the idea of like that familiar thing of like some families just have you do this one thing and then
You can't escape
You
Is
it.
it kind of
can't
like
escape
a
it.
puppet and the puppet master, but
Kinda.
you don't know that there
But
is
it's
a
like-
puppet master?
But it's like family and shit like
family,
that.
yeah.
But
right,
like
yeah.
it's like the family has a certain goal for you, and you're not gonna escape that goal no matter how hard you try,
Yeah.
because it's all set up against you. And the acting in this film is
Oh my god.
phenomenal. It is so good, and I want to say it really does have some genuinely terrifying moments. Like I would say, like not
the
like
car scene.
the car scene, and I want to see that one scene towards the very end of the film where he's like trapped up in the attic, and the mom's
Oh, that shit was creepy.
that it's like it's terrifying. Not in that it's
Yeah.
like a ghost coming after you. It's terrifying in that it's like,
And it's your mom.
and it's your mom. So it's
Yeah.
like your mom. It's unsettling as fuck. I think it really does a wonderful job of like making everything unsettling though. And it's definitely one of those movies where you should rewatch it so you can kind of enjoy the plot twists that was set up, because there's a lot of stuff you do miss, I think, the first run
Oh,
of the movie
definitely.
that you can
It's
appreciate
also
the
one of those
second run.
movies that, like, with the benefit of YouTube, having smarter people
Mhm.
explain it to you
Yeah, exactly.
makes the experience
Like,
so much better.
Half of what I've just said came from a bunch of smarter people.
Yes.
So.
And also, like, when you learn about, because I don't think they explain what the demon is,
Yeah.
but, like, when you look it up, you're like, oh, wow, they did a
lot of research.
The writing is, like, really good.
It's well
because-
researched.
Yeah, well researched, because
It's
I'm not going to say I forgot the name of the demon. Payman?
Payment. Yeah.
Payman, yeah. Look him up.
And
Cool
it's-
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about Hereditary? real quick?
Pretty spooky soundtrack. I think everyone's familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
The song I think everyone's familiar with is I think called "A Good Man Goes to War" or something like that. It's the
Oh.
because Hereditary is not only like good story wise and acting wise, it looks beautiful.
It's
like,
shot beautifully.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really, again, artsy.
yeah, very artsy,
Oh,
and it's like
cool.
I think it sort of set a whole new bar
Oh,
for those
yeah.
kind of movies. It's like
Isn't
It's
it A24?
it's A24. I think
Yeah,
it's
our good old friends A24.
I think it's also like what kind of got people, like a lot of people into A24.
Oh, yeah.
It sort of just kind of blew
Yeah.
up the brand.
A24 is like
It's
where
studio.
directors just do like really weird artsy shit.
It's
and
like-
For the
It's
sake
like
of people who like.
yeah,
the
it's really
that,
fun.
Yeah.
Like they recently did Everything Everywhere All at
Real.
Once.
Oh,
I prefer
I've
the
heard
black
reviews about that
phone.
as well.
I
Oh,
love
fuck.
the
Damn
black
it.
phone.
I'm cutting that
Black
out.
Phone was good.
It's- okay, fine.
I loved
Very
it.
I've seen Black Phone. I really like it. I will consider it a ghost movie, so we can talk about it a little bit.
I
But we
saw
do
it
have
in
to move on.
theaters twice because it's so
Yeah,
good.
I saw it once.
I
I really
loved
liked it.
it.
I will say this. I think its adaptation of like how children fight is a bit funny in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love it.
Because those kids, they fight like movies. Because I've never seen someone actually use a roundhouse like that in a fight that effectively.
Maybe it's because they're in the 70s.
What
That's
else
true.
were in the
They don't have
70s were kinda
phones, so what are
wild.
they gonna do?
Beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. You know what's
Funny,
fair?
kind of a weird story that happened to me at least. Couple things is apparently the jump scares were
Oh, yeah.
pretty good. I loved them
Very
personally.
Good. Very good.
But I got so scared during one of them that like I clammed my fist and my bicep cramped.
Oh,
So
no.
I'm sitting there with a cramped bicep trying not to fucking
That's
die.
See,
hilarious.
I saw it with my friend Callie, and
Mhm.
she's like not a horror movie person.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I think you'll like this. It's fine. And I wasn't, because even I jumped, and I'm like
Oh.
more averse to these.
Right.
And so I was like, Callie, you can hold my hand, you'll be fine. And she was holding my hand, and then the jump scare happened, and she dug her nails
Oh.
into my skin.
No, yeah. It's directed by the same guy who did Sinister.
Yeah. Oh, that is really that.
Yeah.
The trailers for Sinister fucked me up.
Lily
Okay.
had something to say.
Sorry, go on.
Go on.
I was gonna say that at the first jump scare, I was the only person to jump in the entire movie theater laughed at me.
Oh, wow.
That's
bad.
mean.
That's
why I
mean.
didn't want
Okay, but wasn't it like 6 people?
It was like 10.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
they're
would
just
like to say.
assholes.
I would like to
Yeah.
say this about the Black Phone. It was based off of a very short story
Mhm.
by the son of
By
Stephen
Joe
King, Joe Hill. Check his
Yes.
work out. He's got a lot of fantastic
It
stuff.
feels very much like
Steve-
a Stephen King
and when
story.
I say short story, it's like I want to say it's maybe 30 to 40 pages.
Oh,
and,
wow,
And
okay.
like
Well, the movie's short.
it's short, but
Yeah.
I don't think you understand how short the short story is.
Oh,
It is
okay.
short. Like the first, I'd say 15 minutes of the movie, that's the short story.
Oh wow. Okay.
Fuck, really?
Yeah,
How
I
big
want to
Oh,
is
say
the
wow.
story?
it's because it was in
Wait,
like a.
what's it called?
So it's called The Black Phone, but it's in a collection called 20th Century Ghosts.
Huh.
I think that's in the library.
Well,
Probably.
if
Go
it is,
check it
go
out.
check it out because it's
Joe Hill.
really good.
Joe Hill.
Highly recommend actually
Stephen
reading
King
that
what?
short story. And
Oh.
then I think he released a sort of kind of like another book, The Black Phone, but like it kind of goes in tandem with the movie more than a short
okay.
story. I think it just builds on some character stuff, but I think this movie really actually built on the characters that Joe Hill had like laid out.
I will say the one thing I also remember about this movie. There's a character named Max in this. And it made me laugh because like that character Max is like he's like you see he has like multiple lines of coke on his like desk. It's the 70s, so of
Oh
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like who doesn't? Who wasn't?
He's also
Who doesn't
in
have-
Sinister.
Who doesn't have multiple
Yes, he
lines
is in
of coke
Sinister,
on
yes.
their desk in the 2022?
Me. He also has a porno stash.
Working on
You
it.
can cut that. That's okay.
You might want to cut that entire thing.
Yeah, it might. But no, yeah, I found that really funny. Just that I find it funny whenever like I have my name in a like my name is used in the film because I'm like,
Max?
because like no, seriously.
Your name is so common.
No.
Yes, your name is Max.
But no,
bro.
I'm used for like very weird things. I'm usually used as like the name for
A
like a
dog.
teenage boy, a dog, or apparently now a coked out creep.
Yummy.
Hey, you
actually
cool.
I
pretty
think every
nice.
time I've heard my name in
A
the movie,
variety.
that character always dies.
I've
Not
never
gonna lie, I
heard
think-
my name in a horror movie ever, so.
Neither
Oh,
have I.
your
I
name
don't
is
think
definitely in a horror.
No, it is not.
Yes, it is.
Laura?
Yeah,
No.
you're
No,
definitely in a
way.
horror
in a
movie.
horror movie.
No way.
For real.
We'll look this up later.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I am confident that we are right and you are wrong.
I think we're
would
in
never
family.
be in a horror
Also,
movie.
I want to say this real
I'm
quick.
not gonna say it in recording because it's
Oh.
so uncommon, but like.
I can cut it, but okay. No, real quick, just to point out my fact again. Hocus Pocus, the first movie, the main character's name is Max, and the entire movie is every character in the town making fun of the fact that he's a virgin. And every time,
Okay.
Yeah.
every time
Laura Barnes is the main antagonist of Unfriended.
oh, how funny.
Got him!
You're an antagonist.
You
Not
are in a
just
horror
any
movie.
antagonist.
Wow, good job.
You
part of the world with some foreign horror.
Let's go.
Nice segue. So basically, we're gonna start off by talking about J-horror, and basically what that entails is like The Ring and The Grudge, but it's really Ringu and Juon. Those are the Japanese versions of those things, or the originals. So I'm gonna have people who actually know what they're talking about talk about what Japanese horror is like and what it's different, how like Americans view ghosts and how Japanese people view ghosts. So Kris, take it away.
Oh God, you're putting me on the spot. Okay. I mean, kind of just before, like a preface to this. In Japanese culture, at least, ghosts are seen as more like wandering spirits, not so much revenge seeking. Like occasionally, you'll get the ghost that was like brutally murdered and wants some revenge, like dead wives or dead brides.
Ghosts.
Isn't that the idea of The Grudge?
Yes,
Where like
I think so.
the Grudge is known for like that voice, and the reason why is because she died because like asphyxiation,
Yeah.
so her vocal cords are crushed.
Kinky.
Nora! You're talking about a ghost.
Now I have
And?
weird images of The Grudge.
Cut
We
that,
were talking
cut
about
that.
ghost dicks earlier.
It's a running theme.
I gotta keep it equal opportunity. Alright.
Equal opportunity.
Yeah, so basically, a lot of times they're just ghosts that are wandering around confused. You don't really get the super scary ones unless that's like yokai, and even then, most of them are just mischievous. They don't actually hurt people. They just like play pranks. I think once you get more into like oni, which is like the Japanese version of demons, that's when you get into okay, they're gonna hurt someone, they're gonna kill someone.
Like rip your arms off and eat you.
Would you
Yeah.
consider the girl, I think her name is Sadako, from The Ring, to be an
Sadako
oni
is-
or a traditional ghost? Because she's
She would be more yokai, I believe.
interesting. Okay.
Because
Onis are like demons depicted as
Yeah,
demons.
those are the
typically.
ones
they
who
don't
will-
they don't manifest as humans. They're like an actual what you think of as a demon, like Lord of the
Okay.
Rings style, is what you get
Oh wow.
like
Yeah.
mythologically
like,
pictured.
onis
Yeah,
do not come from humans.
right.
Oh,
They're,
okay.
They're
They
a
are not-
race all but
Yeah.
to themselves.
Oh.
And then I think yokai are kind of the same. Occasionally, a dead person becomes a yokai, but most of the time they just become spirits that are lost or passed on.
Yeah.
There's classifications of yokai in varying sizes, and they all are built out of their own mythos of some kind. So they all have like a connection to a part of like our world that carries them in. Like you shouldn't go by a river during certain like at night by yourself because the kappa could come steal you away.
Yeah, I've heard about
Like,
Kappas before.
and a lot of times they were built at a time where it was in the same way we did Grimm fairy tales. They're used as a deterrent
Oh yeah.
to kids that there's a boogeyman in the forest. Don't mess with the boogeyman.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember hearing about one particular type of creature or ghost or whatever it was, that it's the idea that at night it's just a floating head in like a red sack, that Boeing sack.
Oh, that's more Thai folklore.
That's Thai?
Yes.
Okay, never mind. My bad. I did not know.
Yeah, I'm about to say
They have
like,
a lot
I've
of
never
shared-
heard.
Yeah,
shared
that's
I've never heard that in
experience.
Japanese, but I think my one friend who is from Thailand, she mentioned that like.
But no, I've seen like, I think they made a movie about that recently, and I was like, oh wow, that looks interesting, because it's also a tragic love story. Also, I'll say this, a lot of like Japanese horror films don't end in a, like, here we have like, you can get an occasional like really a bad ending, or, I don't mean bad ending by like, not no one wins.
Everybody
Fact that-
dies.
Yeah, everybody dies or
They're
whatever.
very Greek tragedy ends.
Yeah, a lot of
Everything ends sad.
Yeah.
You do not get to be happy at the end of the movie. You get to feel bad like the main character.
Yeah.
And then you go home.
And then even
Yeah,
sometimes.
And then you cry.
And then,
And then
you cry.
sometimes you get the sad ending, but also you get like, oh, I made it. Never mind. Nope.
You don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You
like that
think you
last
escaped.
scare. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like Final Destination.
Kind of. Yeah. No, yeah. Also, I want to talk about like there's particular tropes / aesthetics with J-horror, and like mostly Asian horror, I should say. Is I think The Ring really, or Ringu really brought that to the forefront with the idea of like a girl in all white, long black hair that's pretty much covering her face.
Yeah, that kind of plays into the
Yeah.
fashion and then the color symbolism in Japanese culture, and I think maybe in Chinese culture too, with the color white representing death.
Funerals, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, yeah, that's why a lot of times you'll see the ghosts in white, or they're portrayed with more lighter tones, because those lighter tones are associated with death.
Okay.
And then long black hair is just a beauty standard that, hey, long hair, and it's just so happened to be from the face, I guess.
Yeah.
Can I say something as someone who knows nothing? So I've never seen The Ring, and I have a really specific reason why.
Okay.
Because
Wait,
The Ring,
which version of The Ring?
the American and
The original.
yeah,
Japanese.
the Japanese. I've neither version
Ringu.
because at the very least, if it follows what I understand of the American version, is if you watch the tape, you get a
Okay,
phone
yeah.
call, and then like you're gonna die in 7 days. And I'm like, if
Yeah.
I watch this movie, I've seen the tape, so I'm not gonna watch the movie.
Well, you know what's funny? In the
watch
American
it.
release for the DVD, they in the bonus features they have the tape, and it's basically like, if you want to,
Well,
Go for
so
it.
go
they,
for it.
I'm gonna do it.
so,
I'm gonna do it.
What the movie did that was really interesting and smart, at least in America, I don't know what they would have done in Japan, is when the second one came out, you could like basically go to like your local Blockbuster just before it came out and be like, hey, my friend really likes this movie, I'm gonna write down their number. And then they would call the number, and it would just say 7 days.
That's wicked.
Yeah, and so
Oh,
you
that's
could like prank the
great.
shit out of your friends.
I love that.
I was really scared when I saw the Japanese Ring
Uh-huh.
because girl had it on a VHS.
Yeah.
And it's really weird. Ringu starts at supernatural horror,
Yeah.
but it ends up going into psychological
Yeah.
and all this like sci-fi shit. I'm just like, holy
So I came back. So I watched it for a school project in high school.
What kind of project was that?
This sounds like a good project.
It was a very great
Florence
project.
kind of
My
project.
Japanese culture project was
Oh,
on
okay.
Japanese
Okay.
film. So I was like, I'm gonna watch The Ring.
So she's like, The Ring, that's it.
That's
That's
it.
culture.
That
shit
one.
I'm going with.
Most of the boys are just like Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Naruto.
that was
You
everyone
watch
else.
the
I
scariest
was
thing I
watching
can.
The Ring. And so I
Ringu.
come back to school, darkest bangs under my eyes. And I'm just and my poor teacher comes up, he's like, are you okay? And I'm like,
I watched the tape.
No.
you better fucking pass me. You better give me the greatest grade on this paper you have ever given. And then if I die within the next week,
I think everyone's put up great points though on what is really emblematic of the whole genre is that two common themes used are it is a relatable everyday kind of like presentation. So it's in like a school building, it's in a home, it's in a workplace. It's something you yourself could picture
Very
yourself in.
personal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very personal and supposed to be very private.
Like with
Or like shared, like a shared experience among all viewers. Like you all
Yeah.
went to school. You all
so
were
yeah,
able
for
to-
like The Ring, it's like everybody watched
Which is
during the time VHS
every
tapes.
VHS,
Grudge is like
DVD.
you all live in a home, and what if
Right.
your home had just a freaky girl in it?
And so, but I
I
think
mean-
also is
How freaky
is
are we
the
talking?
sense that a lot of the horror is done without intentionally being
Yeah.
horror.
Yeah.
It's like this whole sensory experience, and that's why you feel like your skin crawls.
It's everyday stuff.
Should we introduce Shelldyn now?
Oh, surprise guest, special guest, Shelldyn.
Woo!
I'm not here.
Hi, Sheldon. Anyways.
Run it back. All right,
Okay.
go ahead.
All right, one film I want to talk about that's kind of on the same level of like that familiar idea is this movie called Dark Water. What's it? It's about a Japanese woman who's recently going through a divorce and a custody battle for her kid, and she has to basically move to an apartment building that's kind of run down and not really in the best shape. And her room has this huge mold stain on the ceiling, I should say, and it keeps dripping. And it's just like, okay, it just becomes like a nuisance in the beginning, but as the movie goes on, it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and like no one knows where this is coming from, and like she starts seeing this little girl like around, and like this little girl's kind of making it like starting to mess with her psyche a bit, which in turn is making her lose custody of her daughter. So it's this thing of like, the more like she's really just trying to ignore this ghost, like it's not real, and if I focus on this, I'm not gonna see my daughter. And it's this really quite sad and depressing movie. It's just about like someone's struggle for sanity, and in the end, the sacrifice that she has to do for her daughter is really touching. But yeah, it goes definitely into a lot of themes of like that familiar idea, especially with the idea of like something's wrong with your ceiling and it's the problem's just getting worse, but you can't fix it. And like the divorce thing, the custody battle, because like she's trying like it's a really beautiful movie. Horrible American adaptation, but it's a really good Japanese horror film that I think a lot of people should talk about more because of just what it symbolizes. And yeah, just go on.
I think that's great. Now this isn't a movie, but it's a piece of media I've read that I've never met anyone that's also read it. So if you've read it, please let me know. It's called Nijihara Holograph. It's essentially a long one-run manga light novel.
Okay.
And it's around a group of high school students, and a girl falls in a well. And she falls in a well.
Always the well.
But this isn't necessarily about like a true ghost coming back.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the weight this now. It's almost like the weight of it is a ghost in its own right.
Okay.
But
like the grief.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it jumps to like current day, and then it will jump back to when it happened, and then it'll jump to current day, then it'll jump back to when it happened, and current day, and like so the whole thing is fractured.
Oh wow.
So like the whole book, you don't know quite where you're at. Like you were saying with the colors about like
Last Night in
Soho, or like we were talking about those kind of subtle ambient things that are the real horror of it, is like in the same way that all their sanity is fracturing at this kind of like haunting idea of like a grief or like a ghost like experience of like they like feel things that aren't there. The book itself is fractured, and you have to piece together what the story was even trying to tell you. So you kind of have to like start drawing correlations between what you're seeing. Is that today? Is that then? Is that back and forth? And it's just all really fractured, and it's this huge story with a lot of like just really heavy. There's no light in this novel anywhere. Like,
sounds like fun.
It is really depressing because it just all of it's just very heavy. It's
Okay.
very heavy things that everyone is grappling with in this, and it's just a very interesting read if you really enjoy that kind of like thought-provoking horror where it's when you get it, your skin kind of crawls and you're like, oh, that's messed up. Like that's crazy.
I think we're going to talk one more film that's not J-horror specifically, but I know you really wanted to talk about it.
Absolutely.
It's Taiwanese horror, and it's called Incantation.
Incantation. I actually watched this on my plane to Taiwan. It was so good. Yeah,
Oh,
the one on
Shelldyn, you can actually
Netflix.
talk about something.
It's on Netflix.
This shit is gas. It's not
No, let me take it over. Come on.
My fault.
Taiwanese pride over here. Nah, so what happens is it's not quite fractured as Zack was just describing. However, what we see a lot of is there is this young woman who is taking care of her daughter. She doesn't have full custody over her daughter because she is mentally unwell. But what we are seeing, though, is that when she brings the daughter home, daughter comes home with something, and this thing is making noises outside of the house. The daughter can see this thing, and eventually what happens is that this young woman who's taking care of her daughter needs to go back to the village that she visited many years ago with a couple other paranormal investigators that she was with, and kind of undo what they did. But what they discover, without spoiling too much, is that this village is very remote in terms of its location and just kind of like the people that are within this village, and they are worshiping a deity, I think, or something that is very malevolent. And what they uncover with that is just really disgusting and horrifying to think about. And the way that they went about this is something I have never seen in horror movies before. I was actually kind of terrified, but super fascinated by it all at the same time. The way the plot progressed by, yes, you have this current event, but also flashback to the past of when I was just visiting the village, this thing makes a lot of sense, and this adds to the future of the plot. But, oh my gosh, highly recommend. I
kind of want to check it out because Taiwan has been releasing some really interesting horror films as of late. There's one called The Sadness, which is probably the most fucked up.
Don't even. That gives me anxiety.
You've seen it?
I need to
Or
watch
heard
it.
of
I've
Don't
heard
watch
about
it.
I
Do
want
not
to
watch
watch it.
So fucked
Just,
up.
if you
want to
know what
many
happens
levels.
in it, watch the Spooky Rice video where he breaks down the plot.
Like
Okay.
that film gives me anxiety.
It's
I can't.
fucked
It
up. But
really, like,
Taiwan is basically like, oh no, we can do horror films too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, it's just really cool how they're like stepping up their game in film. I just think that's awesome.
I think in general for foreign films, what sets it apart is that like it sounds bad at first, but I actually think it's a really good blessing for people who enjoy cinematography in movies. Is that they don't care about their audience.
No.
No, they really don't.
And,
They
in,
really
and in
don't.
a sense, I mean, like they don't care how it's going to impact you. They will go like balls to the walls to make you uncomfortable.
It's like
It's
complete
they'll
art.
be like, oh, this very taboo idea that's very triggering for everyone. We're gonna put it in there 3 times, and not tell you it's coming. It's just
Yeah.
gonna happen, and you're gonna be right in the middle, and you're not
Yep.
gonna know what to do.
Yeah.
You're just gonna feel your skin crawl.
That is definitely
like,
with the sadness.
with all of it, and it's just like it really like keeps you intrigued. You're like, that was a 2-hour movie. That was a 2-hour, 50-minute movie because your heart was just thumping the whole time.
Yeah.
Because you
Right.
couldn't. You're just feeling everything at once.
Right.
And I think that's a unique part of that, like a lot of these foreign films, even some that we mentioned earlier, do really well, is that they almost don't care about the impact on the audience.
Yeah.
And like are not overly worried with how you're gonna progress through it. They're just gonna kinda let you naturally take it in, and whatever your emergency response is to what they're showing you is how they're gonna let it play
Mhm.
out for you.
Yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to add? Cause like I totally cut you off
Oh.
there.
He,
Which is fair.
he
'cause,
has
like,
his hand on his chest. He's about to preach.
Come at me, Shelldyn.
I'm not. You basically covered most of it about like the entire plot, and like the one thing I was gonna talk about is kind of a spoiler, but like I don't want to spoil it. It's literally like I'm talking about the ending when you like find out.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
insane.
And
Oh
you
my
can't, I can't,
god.
like, say it clearly without like spoiling
Holy crap. I was on the edge of my seat.
and like what it does, but like
It's called Incantation.
by far one of the craziest twists to like my horror movie history.
Oh.
Like easily. Like I was just like,
You know what? I'm gonna rewatch
they
it
can't
tonight.
see my face.
Well, it's got 63% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's the
Not
best.
everyone
Bro,
appreciates art.
Yeah.
Like these kind of films really
Fuck 'em.
don't care about critics
Or their audience. They're
Oh,
just
I
like,
love those films.
here's a movie, take it.
I feel like that's why most people think they're bad.
Yeah.
No, is because they're like, oh, I didn't like it. Well, it wasn't meant for you then. Like,
Yeah.
It wasn't
It's
for
like
you.
to have fun.
the creator made it just to create it. Like, it's whatever comes out of his or her mind. Like, it's that. Like, I'm not gonna tailor it just to make you feel comfortable. It's gonna be that.
But yeah, would highly recommend watching Incantation if you're looking to get into foreign films. I wish I had more Korean horror films to talk about or more Chinese films because you don't really see a whole lot of like Chinese horror.
Dude, the little bit of Chinese horror I've seen though,
I've only seen psychological horror.
still it freaks me the fuck out.
I feel like
Like-
there's a lot of intertwinement with psychological horror and like ghost level horror because of the
Yeah.
Thai and folklore and stuff
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of the cultures have deeply rooted within them. That you get both typically. You get both
Yeah,
a psychological aspect and a ghost aspect
The
because
ghosts are supposed to mess with you.
Right.
They're not there just to hurt you. They mentally like play games with you. They're mischievous to the point it's brutally mischievous.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to wrap up some foreign horror. I think we've pretty much covered everything. At least we don't want to talk about ghost movies. We will come back and talk about other foreign films. Monsters, maybe some slashers. I don't know if there's actually any foreign slashers. Like, is there like a Japanese Jason kind of character?
I think there are, but they're not like,
Well
like
known.
no, it's more that they're foreign, but they're like Australia. Or
Oh,
like
Wolf
England.
Creek.
Yeah, they're not
Okay,
like,
yeah.
you know, there's stuff like that. And like, yeah, that's
That
technically
fucked up movie,
foreign,
okay.
but in a way it doesn't feel
Even
foreign.
if they did kind of falling into the foreign category, I feel like they would just be really old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like nothing
Yeah.
really new has been produced.
Actually, no. There's some Spanish films that we're gonna move on into some classics right before as our final category for the night. We're gonna kick it off with Katie talking about the Amityville Horror. But you're gonna be talking more about the remake, but you could kind of talk if you know
Yeah.
anything about the original.
So the Amityville Horror is based on a true story of like, so the DeMeo family, there's the mom, the dad, and then their 3 sons, I believe. and the oldest son basically went in and killed all of them with like a shotgun. And this is like another one of those things where he's like, I didn't do it, like something possessed me. And so, you know, it kind of started that idea that this house was haunted. And then another family moves in and they're like, yo, this house is a steal. And this is like the true story of, so this family moves into this house and then like obviously really, really bad stuff starts happening and they're like, we gotta skedaddle. And so the real family left in like 28 days. They could not stay. Like, it was that bad.
Oh, yeah.
Now, some people are kind of skeptical and think that really the family just wanted an excuse because they were very poor. And so they probably wanted something out of, like...
There's a lot of skepticism around the whole case. And Ed and Lorraine Warren were heavily involved in this case at one point.
Yep.
There's a lot of interesting things about the real world aspect of the Amityville house. It's kind of weird how, in hindsight, creepy looking the house is with like its two windows that have just look like eyes.
So my
It's
mom's
freaky,
house as a child, they called it the Amityville Horror House because it had that
That's
same
nice.
set of like windows and that
wow.
arching roof. And so I've like driven past it with her and I'm like, yeah, that's really freaking creepy to look at.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of like style of house that's it's a little unsettling.
Yeah, it wasn't made to look creepy, but just knowing what happened in that house
Yeah.
and the history it now has, it's like, oh, that's... And it's like
Yeah,
an
that's
iconic looking house, and it's
Yeah.
always on the poster.
Yeah, it's
Just
called
those-
Dutch colonial style. of
Yeah.
architecture.
Yeah. Well, and so
But about the movie...
the movie does take quite a bit of liberties, especially the
Oh,
remake.
yeah.
So the original is very much better than the remake because the remake makes Ryan Reynolds the main character.
When was the Amityville case, like the 60s?
70s.
Yeah, because Ryan Reynolds looked like the
74.
typical 70s man.
Yeah.
Yeah, 74.
Yeah. And so a lot of people don't like that casting choice, but like he was very profitable at the time. And
Yeah.
the movie basically really amps up that idea of like what happened in the house as far as hauntings and like possession goes, because basically Ryan Reynolds' character is the one that gets possessed. And I'm pretty sure the original is a lot like that, where like the dad
It's
gets
basically
possessed.
almost kind of like that. It felt like a shot for shot, but there are differences.
I heard, like,
Yeah.
for the remake, they decided to make, like, going back to the J-horror thing, they made the ghosts more passive because of what the history around surrounding what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, well, there's a lot of creepy kids, but, like, they're creepy kids with, like, I don't know, like, shotgun.
The Amityville Horror, like, so the original and the remake, but then there's also like so many more.
Oh, God,
like,
there is.
There's so many that it just makes no sense at that
It's an
point.
exploitation genre at this
It-
point, the
it really
Amityville
is.
movies.
I would like to say that my first introduction to Amityville was in this comic for like kids, and at that time, and it was in my elementary school
Hey,
library.
kids, we're going to teach you how to use a shotgun.
Exactly. So, my introduction to this was like, this is peak horror. Like, the comic, it's for kids, but it's, from what I remember, surprisingly unsettling. And I don't know why it was in our library, but it was there. I checked it out as many times as I could.
Oh, my God.
Peak comic book representation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty good. The original movie was also pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It had a lot of practical effects that I liked that were
Mhm.
very much of that time.
It was also, like, known as, before we talk about one other classic, it was also known as, like, the scariest film at the time.
Yeah.
Until... Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get to that one in a bit.
Yeah.
Alright, we're going to move on to another classic horror movie. One that definitely changed the game for many horror films. So we're going to talk about the Blair Witch Project. Who wants to kick that one off? Have you seen the Blair Witch Project? It's good. So you want to talk about Blair Witch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because so the Blair Witch is about, it's another one of those, it's kind of the introduction to found footage. Even it's probably one of the earliest. What's earlier than Blair
Cannibal
Witch?
Holocaust.
They thought that was a snuff film.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like, it
Whoa.
was...
And the director got arrested.
The
because
director got-
everyone was
yeah.
like, he killed his actors.
Yeah.
He had the directors...
No, it was
They
so
arrested
well.
him because they thought it was
It was so well
Oh.
done that he. Yeah.
He
Yeah,
had the
okay.
actors sign the NDA so that they could not do press for an entire
Yeah.
year after the film was released.
Oh,
Yeah.
So to keep up the mystery, and then when he got arrested, he was like, "Oh, guys, I didn't need your help."
Please.
It's
It's
not.
that's
It's a
sick.
very fucked up movie.
It's a
We
gross
talked.
movie.
We did talk about it on the show for our extreme cinema review, where that's an entirely different kind of horror,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
definitely something. It was a lot of fun recording with you. guys. But but that is the earliest example of found footage. But Blair Witch is the one that really like blew
Yeah,
up
it
the
blew.
genre because
Well,
not only because
It's
I'll
where
just-
the bar's at. It's where the
Yeah,
bar's
it
at.
is.
It's low enough to where people like myself who aren't huge horror fans can get into it and enjoy it for what it is. The creepiness, the unsettling,
What's
the
going
very
on.
cool found footage aspect of the movie.
Right.
But people who enjoy horror can find some nuance in
Oh,
it
yeah.
and
Well,
still enjoy
and
it.
so the,
also brilliant marketing. Go on.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. So the benefit of Blair Witch Project is people thought it was real, right? Kind of like with Cannibal Holocaust, but way less extreme. Because it came out at a time when like the internet was just starting,
Oh, yeah.
but we didn't really have like the accessibilities we do now. So like
It was just a bunch of threads.
yeah, so
Yeah.
the Blair Witch Project had a website. You could go to the website and it had all this lore about like the movie and the people. Like people thought that these were 3 real people who really went out and really like found this witch story thing and really like died because they were pretty not well-known actors. They're still not well-known. This is probably the most famous thing they've all been in. And so you had the benefit of like thinking this was real. And so even though to me it's not like that scary, I try to put myself in the mindset of like watching this and thinking, oh my god, like this
Yeah.
all really happened.
I mean, like they wouldn't actually release like a snuff. Well, maybe they could, but they like
Yeah.
there's no like film studio be like, oh yeah, we're gonna release this actual footage of these kids dying.
See, I
Into
think
the
that they could get away with it because nothing happens on screen. Like
That's
at all.
true, but
they
if
could totally have gotten
here's the
away with
thing,
it.
like actual footage of people dying or like implied dying, is still like
yeah.
it's
I
still
think
messed
it-
up on
I
a
think-
certain level.
I think it's time period with the way it was released.
Yes.
Yeah,
is-
it was definitely.
It's very emblematic of like if you grew up with old YouTube, like
Oh,
old
yeah.
YouTube, that like the quality of the film and stuff. It really seems like this is someone that's like a friend of theirs that just uploaded it to YouTube and someone put
Yeah.
it together.
Yeah.
Like this was really just a playlist of videos
Mhm.
that someone all stitched together and called a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that unsettling like accessibility of it, or
Yeah.
what is played off to seem like it's could be your 3 friends that go in the forest and now find a creepy monster that's living among you
Yeah.
in your friendly neighborhood forest. That like that part play to its strengths in that it's very low in terms of things that it needs to feel very real.
Yeah.
You're very much right about that. Also, I think I know why this is also so big and why this blew up the found footage genre into like a lot of really creative things like Unfriended. But the reason why it's so well known is because the movie was made for like less than $1,000
Yeah.
to the point where they rented the camera and gave it back to get the money back because
Oh,
they were like
wow.
well, yeah, this is not going to go anywhere. It
Yeah.
made millions of dollars, and
Yeah.
they were like, we don't need to make another film. They've tried, and they've done like some really creative like shorts.
The second one is
We
really
don't talk about that.
interesting.
We don't talk
No,
about that.
I think the second one is really interesting because
Really?
the thing about the second
Are we
one,
talking about the 2016 one or the
No,
actual
no,
second
the actual
one?
There's an
second
actual second one.
because the idea of the second one is it takes place in a reality in which the Blair Witch Project movie came out in their universe,
Okay.
and now they're fans of the movie and are also looking for the Blair Witch.
Oh.
Yeah.
But it's not found footage.
It's not.
I
good.
think it's interesting.
I-
I think it has some good scares.
It's got some good ideas, and also I can't blame the movie for its quality based on like a director thing because the movie was like it went through so much like
Yeah.
production hell. Like they wanted to make it like more of like a satire on what the first film was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and like the idea of like these kids actually going out and doing something like that because of it, and then kind of
They
happening
wanted to do
again.
like a Scream kind of version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but not as funny. More like just like black
Yeah,
satire, where it's
yeah.
like, oh no, this is just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So there's just but the problem is like there's a lot of elements about the movie where it's like it's called Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2. There's nothing about a book in that movie.
Yeah.
There's not really a witch. Well, actually,
There's okay.
there's a Wiccan,
Okay.
but like
So, one thing I'll say about the first Blair Witch is now. Can I like spoil the ending? It's 20 years
it's-
old.
yeah, you can spoil.
So basically,
These classics you can spoil.
it ends with like basically one of the guys goes missing and they go and they find him in this house and then he's just staring at this corner and then the girl drops the camera and screams in the background and so a lot of people actually think that what it was is the 2 guys plotting to kill her. Like all of this stuff
Oh
is shit.
fuck!
Yeah. So basically,
I
they
never
think
thought of
like,
that theory, but yeah.
because One of them throws away the map. The other one like ruins the camera.
One just leaves at one point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he just gets
leaves.
angry and walks
Yeah, he's
away.
like,
yeah.
fuck
So
this.
they
and just
think-
leaves.
Like, a lot of fans have this theory that instead of it being an actual witch, because you never see a witch, technically everything
This
that
is part of the
happens.
paranormal part. We can't be a ghost.
I think there's a witch, but I think it's
Okay,
there's
okay.
some validity to this idea of like using the paranormal to make excuses for the actions
Okay,
you've done.
yeah.
Which is
Well,
kind
this
of
is
like
almost like the
IIRL.
demonic possession thing
Yeah.
we were talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah, yeah.
where it's almost like there's a level of psychosis that
Yeah.
is a devil, or is it? We don't know.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's the opportunity that
Mhm.
we don't see anything. It's playing up the very foreign film element of less is more. If you just leave out this creepy vibe long enough, everyone's gonna make up their own mind, which is so much creepier
Yeah.
Yeah.
than you could have put in a movie.
Because
Mhm.
now we've never seen what is haunting them, and so you don't know what's happening, and it never gets answered, and it's just
Never.
not going
And it
to.
only gets worse. Like
Yeah.
everything just keeps getting worse, straight
Yeah.
down.
Mhm.
And so you just keep getting crazier in your own mind, like, oh my god, it's got to be this crazy like witch
Yeah.
monster thing, and then it just ends.
What
Yeah.
is really interesting is how the movie uses its own lore in moments. Like, basically, there's they talk to like locals of the town, and one lady is like, yeah, there was this person who like murdered children, and what he would do is he would make one kid stand in the corner while he kills another kid behind them,
Yeah.
and that's how the
Oh.
movie ends. Is one guy's like staring at the corner, and then somebody else dies just behind. It is so like it's so good, and it's
Mhm.
so like I'm getting chills.
Yeah.
I love this
The
movie.
minimalism
Here's
is
the-
its greatest strength.
Yes!
Yes,
Here's the thing that
minimalism.
I've found out recently about the movie is that they originally were going to show the witch.
Yeah.
Mhm.
At one point in the movie, like they were going to pan the camera, and then there was going to be a witch there. But then they were like, "It looks like shit." If
we don't have the budget
let's
for
just
a witch.
let's just like let's just like
Get a
have
witch,
like
we're
we
gonna
don't
have to return her.
let's just not pan the camera, and we'll just have the characters to react to something there, and that's just like, what are they screaming at? What's over there? Like we
Again,
don't see it.
the
Yeah.
minimalism makes it
Yeah.
so much creepier than if they had showed me
Uh-huh.
a thing.
What?
I'm sorry, I can't help but imagine that one of them was like, hey, like, Tommy, is your mom available?
I feel like they
Why do you
have
think
some.
my mom looks like a witch?
What you did
She
to
did
Tyler
kill
for
children.
the photo shoot. Like, hey, you
Oh,
want to
yeah.
come act in our movie for
Yeah.
5 minutes?
Yeah, no, literally.
And we're like, hey, you want to come take pictures with us for an hour?
And then
Yeah.
she's just
Okay.
there for the rest of the time, like, you're doing great,
Yeah.
sweetie.
That would be terrifying. Your mom just showing up in the middle of the woods. That maybe that.
That's
I'd
why he
hate
was terrified.
that.
Not
Yeah.
his mom in the corner.
Shit.
Mom,
we
what are
don't
you
know
doing
is his
here?
mom.
But also what I really
Yeah.
what I really like about movies like that though is like you can kind of create your own image of
Oh,
what
yeah,
they're
yeah,
seeing.
Right.
Yeah.
And like
You're-
my overactive imagination is just like
So much
Oh,
worse.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like you imagine multiple things. Like I can never imagine one thing and I never imagine it the same way when it's that open ended stuff. It's like ugh.
It's unlimited.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you show something, it's limited. It's not.
Right.
Especially now that you've told me that there's a theory
Yeah.
that the two guys killed
That's
her.
so much
Ugh.
more unsettling when you bring it
Yeah.
up.
I like
Yeah.
that.
I like
Because
it.
then
That's
that
gonna
means-
be my headcanon now.
So
Yeah.
now when you watch it again,
That means
And you can take
that
that to
one
your
guy who
places,
walked
too.
away. That one guy who walked away probably was setting shit up,
Yeah.
and they had to set this shit up.
Yeah, you're
fool her
right.
into thinking.
What is that? Like hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah.
It feels like that where you're like, oh, it all makes sense when I look back. But in the moment, I was just like, oh, he's just starting to lose his mind. He's been out there a long time.
Mhm.
Oh no, wait!
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
you start
yeah.
analyzing, like you get faster. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's very
Yeah.
unsettling.
it's also really short, so it's like a nice quick watch.
And then you can watch it again and be like, what
Yeah.
happened here? Yeah.
Watch it twice in one
Well, watch it once.
My heart
Don't
would
hear
not
what
be
you
able to
said.
handle
Come
it.
watch the episode and then go
Yeah,
back and watch it
pretend
again
like you
and
didn't
let me know
know
what you
I
think.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about Blair Witch Project? Because I do want to.
I think that was a good summation of it.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to Poltergeist. This one is kind of an interesting film because not only is it like it's a scary as shit horror film, but also a family film.
Kinda, yeah.
It's a.
We got away.
It's a
I
family
think
fiction.
we got away with it watching it in my film club in high school because you could only recommend rated R movies, not assign them.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think we were allowed to get away with this one.
Okay.
But this one is an interesting production in that like it's a Steven Spielberg Amblin production where it's a lot of his like it's a lot of well-known-ish actors. I think like William Hurt. No, who's the Oh no, Mr. Incredible is the dad in this movie.
Let's go.
Yeah, basically what it is, this family moves into this new house, at first it's alright, but they start seeing some like poltergeisty shit, and like at first they're like, oh, these
Cool.
ghosts are cool because
Yeah.
they're like
Sliding the child
Sliding
across
the child
floor, and
across
they make
the
a game out
floor.
of it.
like they're having fun with it, and then next thing you know the ghost is like, haha, fuck
Psych.
y'all.
That's fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they have to hire a bunch of like mediums and psychics and all ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, and all that kind of thing. And there's some like creepy shit. And also like there's one moment where like a doll strangles
Okay.
a kid, and
Okay, I
then
also
like a
remember
rapey giving tree comes out of the window and like grabs a kid.
Oh, I have.
So
Okay, I've seen
there's that-
parts of this.
There's
Yeah.
that scene with the doll where it's on the chair and then it moves.
Uh-huh.
I was watching this with my brother, who's he like doesn't get fazed by anything.
Mhm.
And so he's sitting on a stool kind of like this, and he's just kind of watching, looking at his phone, looking at his phone. That scene comes on. I know what's happening because I've seen it in a YouTube clip. It's still unsettling. He looks up, he watches it, and then the clown doll moves, and he almost falls off the stool, and he's just like, no, no, and then he left after that, and I was
Yeah.
like, haha.
It's a classic like scary movie, and it's also known for like a lot of really cool quotable lines, like the girl putting her hands on the TV going, "They're here," that thing. Also, this movie does kind of run into this trope that I think we should talk about of the Indian burial ground
It does.
trope. So it's the idea that this house is built upon Native American burial
Pet
grounds.
cemetery. Sorry.
Kind of.
But it's really amped up in this because
Yeah,
it's
it's like-
because the first part of the movie is like, oh, is it like the family has some connection to the developers and they get this nice house or something?
I think it might be that, or it's just like, hey,
'Cause
this
it's
house
like-
is like, no one wants to buy this house because of this thing.
But it's like no, I think it's like the whole neighborhood. It's like
Really?
like one of those kind of box neighborhoods or
Oh, yeah,
cookie
yeah,
cutter
yeah, yeah,
neighborhoods.
yeah.
My sister is like so freaked out by those neighborhoods. That's why she wouldn't watch this movie.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Just
she's
the
like,
neighborhoods?
she's like, I
Conformity,
can't.
man.
Yeah,
that's fair.
it freaks her out. So she's like, she saw like the opening scene with the whole neighborhood. She's like, I'm not watching that shit.
Fuck that.
No,
You know-
I'm not.
Nope.
This is a weird comparison, but for me, these kind of movies, this time, this kind of style, always remind me about the appeal of like the Twilight Zone.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's this
Yo,
like
it's so true.
it's that there's this subtlety that like you're like, oh, okay, it seems pretty average, and then the Twilight Zone effect kind of starts, where
Yeah.
it's like,
Rod
Oh.
Sterling comes in.
This
and
is
be
a
like,
little
"Ew."
bit-
So
this is a little bit off.
Twilight Zone.
well, this is way off.
Uh-huh.
Oh, where are we right now? What is going on?
No.
And then by the end of it, you like have some sort of like summation of it all.
Yeah, you're very
And
much
like,
right.
and then everyone kind of has like the closure of like, I can't believe that just happened. I'm gonna try to forget it ever did,
Mhm.
and then it's over.
It's interesting you say that because I've always noticed this thing, especially with horror movies, is like 60s really like kicked off. They were inspired by what happened in the like 30s and early 20s, or like 40s, I should say, of that kind of horror. And like, so in the 60s you get a lot of like atomic age horror where like it's science gone mad. And then when you get into the 80s, they were inspired by the 60s. So when you say like Twilight Zone, I could totally buy that because Steven Spielberg, who only produced this, I should say Tobe Hooper, director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, did direct this movie. There's a big debate in the film community about, is this his film? Is this Spielberg's film? Because it feels more like a Spielberg film than it does a Tobe Hooper film. But it has been confirmed by many different people that it is a Tobe Hooper film. But with Poltergeist, it is that thing of like, because of what you said about it being inspired by 60s stuff, yeah, it's just like, it's really interesting. Now, artists are being inspired by what came in the 80s. Yeah, Poltergeist, great movie. It's a classic. It does have a remake that did come out in 2015. Again, it's alright. It's just like,
Mid.
yeah, it's mid. It's mid because it just uses CG for all the really
Background
cool
noise.
practical
Oh.
effects.
Kind of like if
I
you're
think-
like if you got something to do and you want a like little bit of entertainment in the background, I think you could watch it and be okay.
I mean, Sam Rockwell's the dad in this one.
Okay.
I think there's some warmth that comes with the. I hesitate to call it old-fashioned, but
Classic nature of it.
the actual performance of a thing in a thing.
Yeah.
Like CGI isn't great for everything. Like it will look good, but there is there's a part of my brain that gets scratched right when I know that this trick was truly performed on set
yeah.
in multiple takes that like just comes through in the legitimacy of like the reaction or the way it actually happens in front of me where I believe it
Yeah, 'cause
because
I
it
think,
happened.
I think with CGI, it looks too perfect.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah.
Like it has a too perfect feel. It's just like okay.
It's too shiny.
Yeah.
I feel like some of the movies we talked about this with, like Mama, they were like, okay, and Crimson Peak for that matter, they used CG ghosts in a way that was like, okay, how, if we're not going to go practical, how can we do this to make it look creative and different and otherworldly? So it's like, so we're really playing with that uncanny valley of like, that doesn't look real, but that's meant to be the case.
I think that was a point we all kind of agreed on
Yeah.
earlier, was that the less is more again.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, okay, when you use CGI as like a tasteful element,
Yes.
rather than your pin-all
Uh-huh.
like thing, like we're building up to this big reveal of this big CGI ghost.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a letdown
it's
because
so,
it's
Yeah.
never as scary as you make it in your head,
Uh-huh.
because the one in your head feels real,
yeah.
I'm
and this
gonna-
feels too much.
I'm gonna blurb about Evil again because they do kind of this. Sorry. So there's a demon in Evil. His name is George.
Love that.
Love it.
Oh, George.
He's practical effects. He's
Uh-huh.
a man in a suit
Mhm.
that's like totally done to demon. But there's also CGI effects as well, but they don't use it heavily.
Oh, okay.
And I think that just kind of works with what all you were saying, because they use CG when they think it can be used in a really good format. But then if it's something that I think they think can be approached with practical effects, they do practical effects,
Yeah.
and that works for them.
I think that's just should be the case for most things, especially when you're on like a budget.
I
And
think the problem is they're not.
they're not.
These
Yeah.
days, everything just goes, oh, it'd just be quicker and easier and less expensive to do it CGI.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Poltergeist. Okay, we're gonna end off this review, this whole episode, with granddaddy of all possession, ghost, demon movies, The Exorcist,
Yes.
which is probably to this day like the scariest, like most uncomfortable watch that I watched this movie at the perfect time, like October, 1:00 in the morning. I was just like,
You don't
fuck
watch it at the witching hour? 3
Yes.
o'clock?
Yes, I was like, fuck it, go after me, ghost.
Ooh, ballsy.
Yeah, and I was just like, this is perfect atmosphere, because the movie is cold, and they purposely make it cold, and like you see the breath and everything like of everybody. And I was feeling that too, and to this day, there's just some freaky elements that like that quick shot of the face is so scary to me, because it's like it's unsettling, because you're like, what was that? Like, what just happened? But The Exorcist is about a girl named Reagan. At first, it's kind of like the Poltergeist scenario, where it's like at first it's like this cool imaginary friend that she has, but then like her imaginary friend turns out to be something more of like a possessor, and then she slowly starts to do some horrific things to her body, from stabbing herself with a crucifix in an inappropriate area.
It's pretty metal. No, I'm kidding.
Hey yo.
Laura's second out of pocket comment of the night.
Yeah. Okay. Her head goes 360 at one point.
The vomiting.
Oh,
That's
projectile
before. The
vomiting?
stare.
Yeah.
that one got
Yo.
That one for me was the start of like the what the
Yeah.
fuck is going
Well,
on.
That's
wasn't
the
there
start,
that
that
scene
was
where
like
she just like
weird.
her mom had guests over and then she just like pissed on the floor?
Oh,
Yeah, well,
that's
like all of
freaky
it,
shit.
Yeah.
it's so like crude in such a way where you're like,
Wow.
oh, this is
Oh.
like
Mhm.
bad. Like it.
And
It
you
really-
can, I think you can totally understand why our parents were like, this movie was the most horrific thing
Yeah,
I've ever seen
you
in
know
my
what?
life.
No
Watching
one
it
had
as an
ever
adult,
seen anything
something
like
watching
that.
Oh, really?
it as an adult
still
is
can't watch
scary.
It.
Yeah.
She watched it
Watching
one time
that
at a friend's
When
sleepover.
you are at a relatable age,
And
it's
you
Oh,
hard because like
fuck.
she's
It's
old,
like-
she's young, but she's not so young that if you watch this at like 13 or 15,
I
you
watched
wouldn't
it
have
around
understood
like 16.
Right. That's still, I would say, it's still in the age group where you're just like, oh my god, I have a sibling that's like this old or whatever. They just started pissing on the floor,
Yeah, or
screaming, and like my head rotating and shaking the bed and the lights in the room going like
Mm-hmm.
it's again, it's another relatable-ish scenario to
It's-
like
yeah,
you
it's
could
all-
see someone in your life that could be this person, and this stuff is just so crude to
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
skin crawling extent.
Yes, that happens to Reagan. At first, the parents, or her mom, I should say, because it's a single mom. Her mom takes her to like pretty much everywhere, and like no one is helping her. They're like, we don't know what's wrong with her. She has something wrong, but we don't have any scientific explanation for this. So what do? They turn to the Catholic Church.
The diocese.
The diocese.
I think that every priest I've ever seen in a horror movie after that one though is grossly underwhelming.
Yes.
Like the priest in that movie is actually metal. Like he's actually serious about this. All the other priests like are depicted as like scaredy cats, so to speak, where they're like, I believe in God, but he ain't doing shit here, and they just peace out. They
There's
just
a
leave.
reason for that.
Why is
Alright.
that?
Context. Roman Catholic. Been Roman Catholic all my
Yeah,
life.
me
went
too.
to Catholic
Yeah,
school all my
me
life.
as well. Yeah.
So,
Lutheran.
basically, with,
It's the-
You're good.
actual exorcists, they're supposed to be playing people.
Right.
Like, if you're too overly, like,
Religiously zealous.
yeah,
I think.
that will be used against you. They
Oh,
have to be,
really?
like, somewhat
Really?
normal. Yes.
They kind of have to be realists because their first job, I think, is to actually assess. Like Ed and Lorraine Warren, their first job is to be like, but what if it isn't a demon?
Yeah.
What if
Well,
it's just
so-
some
So
other
actually,
regular
it
day-to-day
is a
fuckery?
sanctified priest. If there even is one, there's only one per diocese. And
True.
They're
Oh,
very
they're
rare.
rare.
Yeah,
they're very rare.
Very
But
rare.
also, they go through like excessive training as to what to expect because they're like, oh, you will literally have to face the devil. So like, you need these protections in place.
Okay, so the priests in this movie are Father Damien Karras plays the younger priest, played by Jason Miller, and the older priest is Father Lancaster Marin, played by Max von Sydow. And yeah, that older priest is a badass. But like, again, going to the point of like, I love the way they portray priests in this movie, because again, especially knowing some of the things the Catholic Church has done, so you know, these are the cooler priests, kind of. But like, what it's really cool about this priest is that like at first he kind of is like losing his faith because like his mom died recently. Nothing's really going well. Like there's multiple like murders in his area.
Yeah.
He's like he's doing like a Rocky style like jog and just trying to keep in health and like everything like that. And so he's just like, so when this comes upon him, he's like, why am I doing this? Because like I'm clearly not the right person for this. And when this other guy comes in, who's known, he's like, I know this demon. Like, we got a history.
We got beef.
I will say, I'm glad they do not name the demon in the movie.
Oh,
but
really?
It
I
hasn't.
think they do.
It's been a hot minute since I've seen it, but
Well, the
I
demon's
think
name is Pazuzu.
Pazuzu.
That's the name of the. Yeah,
It
that's
sounds
what,
like a purple crayon. Not
Yeah.
gonna
Like a
lie.
type of
Yeah,
bread.
until you read what like Pazuzu's known for, then you're like, oh, that's fucked.
Yeah.
It's like it's bad.
Yeah.
Like
because like
Pazuzu's like a bad demon. Like
you've
one of
watched
the worst.
because you were talking about this earlier. You watch a
King of
lot of
Demons.
like
Yeah.
paranormal
Of the
shows.
Wind.
You ever heard
Yeah.
of Zozo?
God.
Yeah, I have actually. Okay, gotcha,
That.
gotcha.
Pazuzu, Zozo. That's the
Pazuzu,
idea.
the demon
Yeah.
from the movie is
So-
like one of the highest ranking. It's one of the higher ranking demons. There's like Lucifer,
And he's
Beelzebub.
Right, there's a
originated-
hierarchy.
He originated
Right,
in
and it's
Mesopotamian
one of them.
religion.
So like
too.
this is
So
like this isn't just your everyday common house demon. This is
it's-
like he's
and
tackling.
Pazuzu originated in Mesopotamian religion, so this is like a hardcore demon that has.
And also, they
Yeah.
kind of set that up in the movie because of that statue. Which
Yeah.
movie I love, like when the way they set up going into that room is so terrifying because they walk so fucking slow up those stairs. Like you could tell, like no one wants to do this.
It feels like a fighter going into a boxing ring.
Yes.
Right? Like you gotta watch them come in and like you watch them as they like go through their checks and they're like psyching themselves into combat mode and you gotta watch it all
They're
go.
gearing up. They have
Right.
multiple layers on. They got the
They're
sashes.
prepared to die in that room and not
Oh,
come
yeah.
out, and it's really portrayed well through the
Uh-huh.
whole walk-up
It
scene.
is
The whole
so
build up is
Yeah.
great. It's
It's a
perfectly
great like.
How is the soundtrack? Because like normally
Creepy
I'm
as all-
huge on
It's-
soundtracks.
Oh, it's
Okay, so
iconic.
have you watched the Death Note anime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Oh,
you know
yeah,
Hell's
I can
theme?
Yeah.
I believe it's partially inspired by some of the Exorcist soundtrack.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
it has like really. It uses a lot of organ music and
Love
like.
organ music.
It is peak unsettling.
Yeah.
It's
Very
not
unsettling.
scary. It's unsettling.
This movie
It's-
has like
It's
inspired.
uncomfortable constantly.
So good midterm study music is what I hear.
Yeah, actually, no, it would be really good midterm study music. Yeah, it's such a great movie. The performances are so good. I really like Jason Miller as the main Father Karras.
I truly think
He's so good, and yeah, Max von Sydow, who was actually the same age as Jason Miller at the time, but what they did is they put him in makeup to make him look older.
Yeah.
And if you look at what he looked like when he was old, same thing.
Wow.
They predicted it so hard. It was like, wow, that's awesome. One really cool thing I learned about this movie is the director, about the writer and director. The writer was a Christian man who was like he was like really studying about like exorcism, and he wanted to write the really true, like to real life exorcist book.
Mhm.
And when the movie was going to get made, he was like, okay, the only way this is actually going to be leveled out, is if we hire a director who's not Catholic. So they went to
Okay.
William Friedkin, who was known for like crime movies and everything like that. And he was like, do you want to direct this horror film? And he's like, no. But then then after a while, they kind of wore him down, like, hey, no, we want you for this, so that we can kind of like it's not a movie about faith per se. It's more about like
Things that go within.
it's
goes
it's
on with
looking
faith.
at faith in the darkest of moments.
Okay.
That's what I really like about it, and it's not preachy, of like, oh, this
It's
is
not
a
pure
one
flicks.
true. It's
Right.
not. Yeah. Oh my God, it's not pure flicks. You could kind of equate it to like any religion.
I would go so far as to say there is no religious context. There's no religious but there's
yeah.
no religious context in the sense of like it's not pushing a religious message.
No. Yeah.
It is
okay.
simply using a commonly widely available good versus evil argument.
Mhm.
And I would
Most
like to
most
say,
of the world is Catholic.
Yes.
Therefore, they would
Yeah.
understand why the crucifix in the private area is bad.
The-
All the mentions of like
Your
of,
mother
like,
sucks cocks in hell. That.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, right, like the crudeness of that, the
Yeah.
priestly garb, and what someone who's an exorcist is. Those are commonly known
Power
things
of
around
Christ
the world.
compels you.
Right, those are things you've like heard since you were a kid, kind of things that would make sense. So there's a wide audience.
So when
to
you
it.
turn it into like, oh no, that all that shit you learned in Catholic middle school, well,
yeah,
look
yeah,
at
exactly.
this shit now.
There's a lot of foundation for the audience there that they're
Uh-huh.
just going to inherently understand the character and
Yeah,
their point of
it's-
view. But what's really being pushed is the battle between good and evil.
I have one nitpick about the movie.
Go on.
That technically, in the Catholic faith, when someone's possessed, they won't actually kill someone because that's seen as martyrdom and they go straight to heaven. Obviously, demons don't want that, but I'm pretty sure she killed a man in the movie. It's like
We
my-
can talk about, because this is a classic. Okay, so what happens at the end is she does kill Father Marin, the older guy. He basically the main character, like the main priest, walks out of the room for like a minute. When he comes back to like really take on the demon, like he's got his faith back, he sees his partner dead on the ground, and he's just like, I think he died from like a heart attack or something like that. Like he couldn't
The stress.
the stress of the situation got to him, and then like it got to a point where like Father Kris just starts bitch smacking this little girl on the ground. He's like, take me, goddammit. Like, like take me, take my soul. And basically like he has the demon go into him,
And then he fights it.
and then he
yoinks himself out the
he
window.
jumps out the window and kills himself with the demon. Now, I do want to talk. I know we said this was going to be the last movie, but I do want to talk about The Exorcist 3 because we don't want to talk about Exorcist 2. It's a bad movie and a really bad movie. Well, Exorcist 3 is actually directed by the guy who wrote the original book and the book that this is based off of. So he was like, I'm just going to make this movie this time.
Because the second was so bad.
Yeah, but like the thing about this movie, it's kind of a direct sequel in that like it's years after that situation. We follow the cop who was there at the scene of the crime, and what happened. And there's in between that time, there was this killer called the Gemini Killer who would do very weird things to like particular people's bodies. Like he put Geminis in their eyes.
Is
Like-
it based on like the Zodiac?
Yeah, a bit.
Okay.
But-
Gem in eye.
Yeah,
kinda,
Got it.
He'd also do.
Easy.
He would also like cut their heads off and all that other shit. But like that killer died, but somehow his killings, like the exact same style of killings, are happening again.
So he's calling it like a copycat.
Gotcha.
Not just the copycat. They basically find a way to like lock down the possible killer within this hospital because like somehow the killer got into this room and killed this person. God knows how. Basically, he drained the entire blood supply of someone into multiple cups without getting a drop on the floor in one night.
Damn.
Whoa.
So they're like, he has to be in this room. So they basically tell him, like, well, we have this one guy who kind of appeared after the that exorcist thing that happened and that priest died, but this guy just kind of came wandering in. And what you find out is that when they go to like the padded insane asylum area, it's Father Damien Kris back.
Whoa.
So what happened was when he died, the demon was like, no, we're still using this. He's in that area between like life and death. Limbo. Not only does he take the soul of Father Kris, it's the Father Kris, the demon, and the Gemini killer, so that the Gemini killer can basically use his body to continue his work.
How would that work though? Because isn't the Gemini killer a separate person, an entity altogether?
It's the idea of Legion. Of like, we are many, we are one, but one.
Okay,
we are also
okay.
one. So that it plays on that idea. And how the film goes about doing that is that they have one actor, Jason Miller, come back to play Kris, or the demon per se. So he's like talking as the demon, but when they have the killer talk, they have a different actor who kind of has like the same hairstyle and like same shape, but it's clearly a different actor to kind of mess with the idea of like, okay, is this Kris? Is this Gemini? Who is this?
Is this the person in the insane asylum?
Yes. Yeah,
Oh,
it's so good because the performance is so good because the guy who plays the Gemini killer is Brad Dourif, Chucky.
Oh.
He is incredible. This is his best performance. It's my favorite performance of any actor ever. There's a moment where it's just one monologue of him looking directly into camera. Well, obviously not talking to us, but the cop, and like he's just going off about like how pissed he was about like I'm gonna mutilate the innocent and on and on and on, and then he goes to his really high highs, and then brings it down low with his acting, and it was just so good. But it also does still carry on a lot of the ideas that The Exorcist set up of like less is more.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is an exorcism in the movie. It's not as good as the first one, but the cop drama element of it, of like what's really going on here, because you can't explain it. It's hard for me to even explain it, but like there's this demon possessing multiple people, and this idea of Legion and how you can't really defeat it, and it's a really good movie.
Like
and I think
can't get rid of the demon is
yeah.
anyone.
So if you were to watch like 2 Exorcist films, you would just watch the first one and the third one and then cut it off. I know they're trying to bring back The Exorcist, kind of. The same guy who did like the new Halloween movies is wanting to come back and be like, hey, I want to try doing the same thing I did with those Halloween movies, where it was like screw everything past the first film, and we'll just do a sequel to the first film, which it kind of makes me upset because I really like Legion. I highly recommend you check out all the films we talked about today, but yeah, give Exorcist 3 a shot. It's probably one of my favorite horror films of all time. Sadly, we have to end this episode off. It was a lot of fun talking spooky, creepy ghost stuff with all of you. I know
Spooktober.
during this time Katie and Lilly had to go, so Katie, please watch her show Today in History, and please watch Lily's show Best Worst Stories. If you're listening to this on Wave Radio, keep listening to all the shows I said before. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and share. If you're listening to us on Spotify, please subscribe and keep supporting us. And we hope your nightmares become a reality. Goodbye.